Welcome to Why Every Supply Chain Professional Needs the CSCP Certification, the third of our 4 webinars about the APICS certification programs. I'm very happy to introduce the presenters for today's webinar. Bob Collins, Senior Director, Professional Development. Kathy Imartino, Director, Product Development, and Megan Glass, Product Manager for the APICS Learning System. So Kathy, can you tell everyone what we're going to cover today?
I'd be happy to, Kim. Hi everyone, we're glad you were able to join us today. In today's webinar, we'll take an in-depth look at the CSCP certification program. We'll talk about why you should earn this credential and how to study for the exam. We'll also answer a few common questions you may have before we dive into the Q&A session. So Bob, can you tell us about the Certified Supply Chain Professional, or CSCP certification?
Absolutely, Kathy. CSCP has an extended focus looking outside the 4 walls of your company. It covers working with vendors and customers, the flow of information, product, and money throughout your end-to-end supply chain. The CSCP validates mastery of supply chain and operations management concepts. CSCP was launched in 2006, and the CSCP designation has been earned by more than 24,000 professionals worldwide in over 100 countries. And it's definitely the standard in global supply chain education. When you look at this map, you see the center of the supply chain is people. Certified professionals are equipped to make more substantial contributions to the organization than non-certified professionals. In this diagram, you can see some of the job titles as they relate to the 5 primary management processes that describe all business activities associated with satisfying customer demand: plan, source, make, deliver, and return. These are also the high-level processes referred to in the SCORE framework. For example, in the far left box, master schedulers and demand managers generally perform planning processes. The CPIM certification provides in-depth coverage of the plan and make processes, while CSCP covers the entire end-to-end supply chain, from suppliers to customers and back again. And with the CLTD certification, APICS has expanded its reach into the delivery and return processes. So Kathy, can you dive a little deeper into CSCP?
Sure, Bob. If your role has an external focus or outside the 4 walls of your company, CSCP may be a better choice for you. The CSCP has only 1 exam, and there are eligibility requirements that we will explain in a later slide in this presentation. The CSCP certification can help you cover the end-to-end supply chain, including globalization, IT enablement, logistics, service industry, and more. Maximize your organization's ERP investments, effectively manage global end-to-end supply chain activities, and increase your professional value and secure your future. Based on current CSCP certification holders, these are the top 10 job titles. Note that this list is not inclusive of all job titles for holders of the certification. So Bob, why should a supply chain professional consider earning CSCP?
Well, you know, supply chain, Kathy, is all about collaboration. And CSCP helps you to understand and navigate the interactions and interdependencies across functions and companies, and also provides you with the skills to improve supply chain efficiency. Since there are many functions within the supply chain, the CSCP also helps you see the big picture, the end-to-end supply chain, a broader picture than you may have from your current position within the supply chain. Finally, CSCP validates your knowledge and competency in supply chain making you more valuable to your employer. Kathy, Gardner, the technology research company, completed a Chief Supply Chain Officer survey. Would you tell us about the survey and how the results tie into the CSCP?
Well, the Gartner's Chief Supply Chain Officer survey lists the top priority investments that provide companies with the most value. The list includes quality of product supply, sales and operations planning, and supply chain analytics. All of these are major topics covered in the CSCP certification. Bob, maybe you can talk a little bit about what the benefits to earning the CSCP to individual professionals are.
Sure. The CSCP really will help you streamline your supply chain. It gives you help in working in a global environment and will increase your earning potential. By the way, our research shows that currently CSCP holders earn on average 12% more than fellow professionals without the certification. Knowledge and skills learned include positively affecting lead times and inventory, two areas of vital interest to companies, increase the efficiency of your ERP system, and give you common terminology that will help you better communicate within and outside of your company. As for organizations, CSCPs can anticipate better alignment of their global supply chain with their business objectives, better productivity, collaboration, and innovation. Note that according to a PwC report from a global supply chain survey, companies can expect to achieve 70% higher performance when they focus on supply chain excellence. And here is a partial list of those corporations who've held in-house CSCP courses. Kathy, APICS surveyed professionals who have earned their CSCP. One of our questions was around career enhancement. Would you share those results with us?
I'd be glad to. CSCP certified individuals indicate positive impacts to their career after becoming certified in the categories of increased knowledge, recognition, special project assignments, salary increases, promotional opportunity, and bonuses. It is important to note that over 83% of respondents indicate these positive benefits occurred within 1 year of becoming certified. We've discussed why you should earn CSCP. Now let's take a look at how you can study for the CSCP program. Megan, can you walk us through the study options?
I would love to, Kathy. So the recommended preparation for the CSCP certification is using the APICS CSCP learning system. Now the CSCP learning system contains both printed books and web-based study tools. The printed books are also available in e-reader format and PDF download, and all of these modes are included in your learning system purchase. The web-based study tools are a collection of educational activities that support these reading materials. So there's a pre-test, a post-test, chapter quizzes, flashcards, online activities and case studies, and a number of other helpful tools, including practice tests. The full online kit includes more than 1,000 questions for the entire CSCP program. Now, when you're deciding to take the CSCP exam, we know that you don't take that commitment lightly. So we actually have a 5-step approach to help you make sure that you're ready. So here you can see the first step is to choose your study method. There are a lot of different preparation choices, so choosing the method that's right for you is really important. Then after you've picked your method, you'll move on to plan your studies. Begin with that end in mind. Create a study plan, assess your strengths and weaknesses, and then move on to the next step, which is to study the reading materials. Here you can focus on weak areas and sections of the exam that might be weighted higher than others. Then you can apply what you've learned by taking quizzes and practice tests, using the flashcards, and go back to the study step to work on those difficult topics. Test yourself, put yourself in exam mode, complete the CSCP practice exam emulation. Then you will feel confident and ready to move on to step 5, which is to take the exam. So let's dig a little bit more into these steps. So step 1 is to choose your study method. Now the APICS certification learning systems are designed to be used in a variety of different ways. so you can choose the delivery format that best matches your learning style and your budget. The APICS North America chapters and international partners offer instructor-led classes and study groups that use the learning system materials. So you can check with your local partner to see if they might have a class for the certification that you're interested in that's coming up. A class is great because it provides structure, expert instruction, and the opportunity for discussion with peers as you go through the materials. But if you can't attend a class or you might prefer to study on your own, the learning system is easy to use and designed for those who wish to self-study as well. In addition, if you're part of an organization and the organization might want to offer more than self-study to their employees, you can receive guidance from our corporate development group on how to organize an in-house class. So once you've chosen your study method, we'll move on to step 2, which is to plan your study. Now, the number one question that I often get from candidates is, how much time does it take to get ready for the exam? How much time do I need to study? I typically respond that every person learns differently and at a different pace. So honestly, study times can vary based on the years of experience you have, the expertise you have in supply chain, which study method you choose, and how quickly you might read and comprehend these topics. But on average, we do recommend studying a minimum of 100 hours for the CSCP exam. And this is an average study time. It's based on the number of pages there are to read, the number of online questions we have, reviewing other tools like flashcards and learning activities. But the good news is that the CSCP learning system is designed for adult learners. It was specifically created to condense the time that it takes to prepare for the exam. And there's actually a couple different ways that we do this. So the first tool we have is the pretest. And working with the pretest and the section quizzes, we can help you to identify and focus on topics that you need to master in order to complete the certification process. And then the Smart Study tool provides customized study plans depending on the amount of time you have to commit to studying. So here you can see a couple screenshots of those, and we'll dig into those a little bit more. So the first activity you're going to do after watching the introduction video is to take the pretest. The pretest is weighted to the exam, and it allows you to assess your current level of understanding. After taking the pretest, you then input those results from your report into the Smart Study tool. So the Smart Study tool helps you to create that customized learning plan. Now, the learning system is going to help you work back from your chosen exam date to help you take full advantage of all the tools that are included in the system. So once you've input those results, and this tool is available as both interactive Excel as well as PDF, you can input those scores into the tool, indicate your own level of comfort for each of the topics, and then a personalized timed study plan is output and weighted against the ECM. Using this tool helps students focus on areas of most need. So now that you have a plan in place, it's time for step 3, where you really dig in and study the materials. So you now have assessed your strengths and weaknesses, you have that plan. The CSCP learning system covers the entire APICS CSCP ECM, or Exam Content Manual. This means that the reading materials work hand in hand with the online tools and the references that were used to develop the exam. So what we really want to stress here is don't skip using any of these tools. With over 1,200 pages of content and 1,100 online questions, it may seem daunting at first, but remember that we've chunked that out into small, digestible pieces of content section by section so that you can learn the content easily and reinforce that learning along the way. Now, during the study phase, you're going to start by reading the materials, and then after you've read that section, you can complete online quizzes and do the online learning activities, and then review these reports and take notes on where you might still have some lower scores, look at the rationale and the questions, and review the flashcards so that you can really make sure that you are understanding that content. So because your study efforts are starting by going through the reading materials, I wanted to note again that the reading materials are available in the online tool as well in an embedded e-reader, which is shown here. Now, this e-reader text is reflowable, so that means it can be viewed on multiple devices, including a phone. There's also an interactive table of contents, bookmarking, and full screen viewing capabilities. In addition, you can request an e-download PDF version of the materials if you'd like to read them offline. So the online component is organized by module. So each module includes access to that e-reader version of the materials, glossary and flashcards to help practice key terminology for that module, online quizzes that are organized by section and chapter, and learning activities that let you apply the concepts in real-world examples. So now we move on to practice the concepts. After you've gone through the reading materials, you've studied it, you want to make sure that you're understanding and mastering these. You should use the online quizzes and activities to reinforce these concepts. And one thing I wanted to mention is that these quiz questions provide immediate feedback. So every time you answer a question, you'll know immediately if you've answered it correctly or incorrectly, including feedback rationale that'll help reinforce the answer and guide you back to the reading materials for additional study. The system tracks your progress through all of these tools, so you can see your areas of strength and weakness and then focus on the chapters that might need additional review. The last part of the learning system is where you'll go to practice the concepts. And the learning system practice exams are one of the greatest tools we have in the online system to make you feel ready. So the practice exam lets you experience the format and functionality of taking the computer-based CSCP exam. That means that the practice exam is timed, just like the actual CSCP exam, and the time remaining is shown in the top header. You also have the option to flag questions that you want to return to before you submit your exam for marking. And unlike the other online quizzes, you're not going to see right or wrong answers or rationale as you complete the test, but once you've submitted it for marking, you can go back to any of these questions and view that same feedback after you've completed it. So this is really a great tool to help calm your nerves and know what to expect on exam day. So before we move on to taking the exam, I just wanted to talk about some key study tips to remember when you're preparing. So remember, there's many different ways that you can successfully study for the exam. So choosing the method that's best suited for your learning style is really important, whether that's instructor-led, self-study, or doing a study group. Remember to create a plan. Start by setting that exam date. Commit to it. It's really going to help you to avoid procrastination. Identify your strengths and weaknesses on those exam topics. You'll need to be familiar with that exam content manual content to make sure you're studying every topic that could possibly come up on the exam. And as I mentioned, these learning system quizzes are going to help you to identify those areas. And make sure you go beyond memorizing. The test is not just about recalling knowledge items. It's going to ask you to apply those same concepts. So you need to make sure that you fully understand them. And that's where the learning activities and the practice exams and the learning system are going to help you to apply that knowledge as well. We also suggest you view the video by APICS instructor Liesl Smith called Techniques for Successfully Taking APICS Exams. This video is included in the learning system in the practice section, but it can also be purchased separately in Shop APICS. In this video, Liesl shares techniques to achieve the highest score possible on your exam, and it has tips for non-native English speakers as well. Finally, the best way to ease test anxiety is to know what to expect on exam day. Know where the testing center is located and what the process is going to be when you get there. Know what to expect on that test format functionality. And to help you with this last item, remember, we've included some additional resources to help you prepare for exam day. So Bob, would you like to talk about some of those additional resources that candidates might be interested in?
Yeah, Megan. Excuse me. As you mentioned, the CSCP exam content manual is probably the most important resource that talks to the structure of the exam. The ECM outlines the CSCP tested body of knowledge and is included in the courseware. It also contains a bibliography of the additional reading materials used to create the exam questions. So the CSCP ECM download is also free to APICS Plus members. Another fantastic resource is the APICS Dictionary and the Dictionary app, which are also the essential supply chain references and free to members. The app contains more than 4,800 terms from the dictionary and includes flashcards and a term of the day. Finally, if you need additional information regarding the testing process and test centers, please review the free APICS exam handbook. Although you should review your handbook prior to taking the exam, we recommend reading the handbook during your studies as well. And step 5, take the exam. Earlier, Kathy mentioned eligibility requirements in order to take the CSCP exam. So beginning with the end in mind, by filling out the eligibility application as one of your very first steps. The application is free and easy, and approvals never expire. And you only need to meet one of the following criteria: 3 years of supply chain related business experience, or a bachelor's degree or the international equivalent, or hold one of the certifications listed on this slide. Eligibility applications must be received at least 2 weeks prior to the day that you register for the exam. You'll receive notification of your eligibility immediately after completing the application, unless you're flagged for an audit. Also, people often ask, what does APICS mean by supply chain related business experience? Related business experience is work that directly connects to some aspect of the supply chain. We've listed a few of those areas on this slide. You can refer to apics.org/eligibility for additional information. Kathy, can you give our candidates some tips for exam day?
Exams are delivered on demand worldwide at Pearson VUE test centers. Individuals immediately receive their score at the test center after completing the exam and will know if they passed or failed. The exam is one 3.5-hour, 150-question test. I suggest scheduling the exam when you begin your training and learning system instruction to ensure a higher level of success in meeting your certification objective. In general, we have found that candidates who test within 3 months of completing their instruction have a much higher success rate in passing the exam.
Now, all of the exam questions are based on the information contained in the list of ECM references. This is one of the many ways that APICS ensures the certification reflects industry-accepted best practices. When taking the exam, people generally get tripped up when they don't read the question properly. So we encourage you all to take time to make sure you have a correct understanding of the question before narrowing down the possible answers. This testing strategy, among others listed here, are covered in the Liesl Smith video that Megan mentioned earlier. With computer-based testing, you can mark those questions you are unsure of and revisit them after you've finished all the others to see if something may have jogged your memory. If not, go back and try to reason through the answer. Eliminate the answers you know are wrong, and that usually leaves you 2 possible answers to choose from. Read the question again, carefully, and then take your best shot.
So as previously mentioned, we have free test-taking tips, which you can download from the APICS website that cover these points and more. You can also find detailed exam day preparation information in the exam handbook. It's helpful to reduce any stress-generating situations immediately prior to taking your test, so being prepared on the process and arriving early will set you up for success. When you pass the exam, you'll receive an email that includes instructions on how to download or purchase your certificate and upload your information into LinkedIn. Your name will also appear on the APICS credential verification tool as having an active CSCP certification for as long as you maintain your certification. Credential verification is a service that elevates the credibility of APICS credentials and can be accessed by anyone to look up an individual's credential status. The page is located at apics.org/verification. To maintain the CSCP certification, individuals are required to pursue activities to support ongoing professional development over a 5-year period. Details on this program are listed in the certification maintenance bulletin.
So Kathy, now that everyone knows what their learning options are, can you talk a bit about the cost?
You bet. So here are the costs for the CSCP program. As you can see by the pricing, it pays to become an APICS Plus member before purchasing either the learning system or the exam. And remember, you have to submit an eligibility application before you can schedule your exam. Bob, now can you talk a bit about options students have for funding their certification?
Well, we all know that every great investment needs some seed money to get started. And here are some of the key ways many of our exam candidates have gotten the funds that they needed to prepare for the CSCP exam. Many of our members work for corporations that have some kind of tuition reimbursement. Some corporations hold their own corporate training and will hold APIC certification classes in-house. There are also job training programs and military benefits that our members may want to take a look at. And PayPal offers a no payment plus no interest for 6 months for those who are interested in that, but you'll need to check their website for details. If you don't think that your company provides incentives, just ask. It's certainly worth investigating. Megan, another question we often get from potential candidates is how to find the time to study and take the exam. I think you have some advice for those candidates.
I certainly do, Bob. So as you know, there's rarely a perfect time to commit to earning a certification. We all have busy lives and not enough time for everything that we want to accomplish. So it's important to just make sure that CSCP is a priority. But it also doesn't need to take over your entire life. Making a realistic study plan that works for the time that you have is really important. So there's a few considerations you can keep in mind to help you plan for the exam. First, figure out the amount of time that you will need to study. We recommend a minimum of 100 hours, so you can break that down depending on how much time you have available each week. It's also best to take the exam within 3 months of completing the learning system, because the longer you wait after studying, the more you're going to forget before the exam. You can use the Smart Study tool that's provided in the learning system to help you with these tasks. So remember, after you take that pretest, you can determine the most important exam topics you need to focus on, and then you don't waste valuable study time. The learning system is made for busy professionals, and it allows you to use your time wisely to help get you ready for exam day. So Bob, I believe we also have an additional way that students can save for their certification investments. Do you want to talk a bit about that?
We sure do. If you order an individual copy of the CSCP learning system between today, March 13th, and March 23rd, and use the code CS18, you'll get $50 off the cost of the learning system. If you're an APICS member, and you need to be, the price will drop from $9.95 to $9.45. If you aren't a member, and why wouldn't you be, the price will drop from $13.80 to $13.30. You can order online at learn.apics.org/CSCP or call the number on this slide. And now we have plenty of time to answer some of the questions. We ask you to please submit your questions by selecting the question tab on the toolbar on the right side of your screen. Enter your question and click send. We'll answer as many questions as we can today. All questions will be captured and answered and posted in a Q&A document that will be available along with the recording of this webinar. Everyone who registered, whether they were able to attend or not, will get an email with the link. So we've got a number of people who've been asking questions, and we'll go through as many of these as we can. I remember one of the very first questions was, why should I get a CSCP certification if I've completed an MBA in supply chain management with courseware covering the same topics? Great question. A lot of our exam candidates do have MBAs. Or are a master's, have a master's degree in supply chain. The reason that they go after the certification in addition to their master's is that certifications look at best practices and tend to be viewed by employers as having more practical learnings available than you might get in the master's program. I would never, ever, ever discourage anyone from getting a master's. And if you've got one, then you're doing very well, and that's great. But the other reason that our candidates often want the CPIM, even with a degree or a master's degree, is that it sets them apart from the other candidates that may be applying for the job that they're looking for. So for those two reasons, we recommend the CSCP for everyone, even if you have that master's degree. And by the way, with the master's degree, the studying and the exam hopefully will be a little bit easier.
Bob, there was another question I think you might be able to help with. I know we talked earlier about the differences between CSCP, CPIM, and CLTD, but there's some questions about, should I take all three? Does CSCP cover the same content as CPIM? Would you be able to help with some of those?
Yeah, so in general, we recommend that you give serious thought to where you are in your career today and where you want to be over the next 5 years or so. And based on that information, then we suggest that you choose one of those certifications. As we indicated very early on, the CPIM really covers the planning and make inside the four walls of your company. It's a way to improve the efficiencies and continuous improvement within a company's ability to make and provide material for their customers. The CSCP takes a wider view, looking across the end-to-end supply chain, so it looks outside the four walls. And then finally, the CLTD looks at that delivery and return part of the supply chain. And so it really depends on the type of job you either have or are looking for, and that's where we would suggest you focus in on that certification that would be most helpful for you. As far as holding multiple certifications, a number of our people do hold a number of certifications. I'm one of them. So it can be valuable. It can certainly expand your knowledge base as well as your desirability to a potential employer. But you know, we recommend you focus on one, go for it, and then give some thought to whether another one might also be helpful. For an example, if you were working mostly inside the walls of your company and wanted to improve efficiencies there, you might go after CPIM. But after that, you might be considering in the next 5 years maybe moving up the ladder a little bit. And a CSCP that looks at the entire supply chain and gives you a better focus from the big picture level might be a good way to help bolster your ability to move up the career ladder.
Megan, I saw a couple of questions about the amount of time it takes to study for the CSCP, especially for those people who are outside of supply chain. Can you talk a little bit more about how those people can use the SMART study tool to start beginning their study?
Definitely. So the average time we have there is an average. So that means that there are some people who will not need to spend 100 hours studying because of their experience, and some people who will need to spend more time. Again, it really depends on how well you understand the content. So the base hours there are based on averages in terms of how long it takes to do the quiz questions, how many times you might need to take them, how many pages there are to read, that kind of thing. So it's really going to help you when you take that pretest. It will break it down by area, so you can see that you're really strong in one section but not very strong in another, and then you might need to spend more time in the section you're not as strong in and a little bit less time in the one that you perform well. That's not to say you're not going to spend time. We do recommend that you do at least do the quizzes for each of the sections to confirm and validate your knowledge in those areas. But really, it's a walk through each of the different components in order to get ready to sit for the exam. So those hours are going to be different for everyone. If you don't have a lot of experience, it's probably going to take you a little bit more time than someone who has a lot of years working as a supply chain professional.
We've got an interesting question from someone who is requiring a little guidance. I'm not going to read the entire question. Some of it's maybe a little more personal. But this individual has been doing implementation of JDA and is interested in getting into more business process consulting within companies. He or she would like to kind of change the focus of their career, and they've been looking at the CSCP. One of their questions is the CSCP the right thing to pursue? So I did ERP implementation for about 10 years as well. And when I started, I had my CFPIM, Certified Fellow in CPIM, and got the CSCP as soon as it was available in 2006. And I found that having the certifications made a big difference in how desirable my skills were to my potential clients. I worked for 10 years, I worked for several boutique ERP implementation firms. And when they would put my resume and other people's resumes from within the company in front of a manufacturing or distribution client, they'd invariably look at my credentials and say, give me the Apex guy. So I found that to be very, very helpful, and I think it would be for you as well.
We've had a couple of requests to repeat the special offer from today's webinar, and just so you all have that, that is CS18. We also have some questions about the how long you have access to the CSCP learning system. So the access to the learning system itself is 1 year. If you can't take the exam within that year and there's extenuating circumstances, you can always contact us and we'll review those and see if we can extend the access to the learning system. But the exam is actually a separate purchase from the learning system. So you will have longer than the 1 year that you have for the learning system to actually sit for the exam.
Megan, someone asked how many pre-test or practice tests can be taken?
Right, so there's one pre-test, and then the practice exams, there's a post-test and a couple of different practice exams available for you. And then within each of the sections, each chapter has its own test as well. So the number of questions are distributed based on the amount of content. So for example, if Section A, Chapter 1 is really long, it's going to have more questions than Section C, which might be a little bit shorter. So it does balance out. The pre-test, post-test, and practice exams are all weighted to the ECM. So you'll see the same number of questions for each of those tested modules that are on the exam. So that actually kind of goes back to some of these other questions people have had about the ECM and these references that are used to create the exam. So I just wanted to point out that the exam content manual does have a list of references. Those references are the books that are used to create those exam questions. Those are the same references that are used to create the CSCP learning system. So while the exam team that creates the questions and the learning system team are two separate teams, we are all using the same references.
Yes, actually, my first gut instinct to answer that question was all of them, but that wasn't very helpful. So yours was a much better answer. We do have someone asking about the difference between CSCP and CIPS. Actually, CIPS is a European sourcing and purchasing not-for-profit or association. They do some really interesting things in the sourcing and purchasing side. They've got certifications that are very different from ours. They're more like taking college courses, where ours are more concentrated. Again, we do work very hard to use the best practices within the certification industry, and to have a high-stakes certification is just different. Now, when you look at what SIPS offers versus the CSCP, the real difference is SIPS goes much more deeply into the sourcing and and the purchasing areas, where CSCP looks broadly across the entire supply chain. So we certainly cover sourcing and purchasing, but we cover many, many other areas within CSCP as well. And we certainly don't cover sourcing and purchasing with the depth that a SIPS certification might have. Someone asked about the ability to retest if they don't do well in the first try. Most people do well in the first try. We hope you will as well. But yes, you can purchase a retake exam voucher or credit. The retake exam, you have to wait at least 14 days before you can register, before you can take the exam again. But the cost for the retake is about, I'm not sure, but it's about half of what the cost of the original exam is. So it won't be nearly as expensive to give you that opportunity. But you know, we're always hopeful that people will study hard and work together and walk out of the test center the very first time with that knowledge that they've become CSCP.
Bob, I'm glad you actually mentioned that one, because I just wanted to point out that the learning system quizzes, you can take those a number of different times. There's no set number of times you can take those quizzes or tests or practice exams, but we do recommend not retaking them quite frequently, because the most important thing is that you're reading those materials that you're prepared, and the questions should be a validation, not a way for you to learn the content. But it is available for you to take as many times as you might need to do that.
That's good. That's great. Megan, can you talk just a brief moment about the demo that we make available for the CSCP for those who might like to take a quick look at what they would be getting into?
Yeah, the demo is actually really great. It lets you look at each of the different components. There's some sample reading materials out there. There's a mini quiz, so you can see some sample questions. And it goes in depth into all the different features and functionalities that are available. So most of those we touched on today, but it really lets you dig a lot deeper into the tools. And there's a great walkthrough, so you can kind of experience the system a little bit more as well. And I mean, I would highly recommend going, putting your information in and going through that demo.
That's great.
It also, I think I saw this a couple different times too, but just to reiterate, the learning system includes everything we've talked about. So it includes the online tools, it includes the books, it includes the e-reader. It's all together in one big package, and it's the same package that you'll get if you do take an APICS instructor-led course.
Very good. Someone also asked to show the cost slide again. So I'm going to try and go back to that. And we'll just leave it up for a few minutes while we're answering additional questions. Someone asked about the advisability of taking CPIM and CSCP together. My recommendation is that's probably too much. I would go sequentially rather than concurrently, if it were up to me. Someone asked about the 100 hours of studying, Megan, and they want to know if it applies to someone who has no supply chain background but has worked in the electronics industry.
Yeah, I mean, the great thing about all of the learning systems for the APICS certifications is that it's teaching you all the content that you need to know for the exam. So the 100 hours is based on those average study times, based on the content that you would need to get through to be prepared. So no matter what your background is, it may take you a little bit longer, but your experience might actually apply in a lot of different ways to some of the content in here. You might be surprised some of the sections on IT you might fly through. So there's a lot of great options for you in terms of studying, and that pretest is really going to help you to gauge how that might break down for your areas of strength and weakness. And Bob, just to follow up on that earlier question about the demo, the URL for that is learn.apics.org/CSCP/free-demo. So you can also just Google CSCP demo and it'll get you to that page as well.
That's great. Kathy, someone's asking, they noticed on this slide the price difference between an Apex Plus member and a core member, a non-member. Could you explain what we mean by a Plus member?
Yeah, absolutely. So Plus member is actually becoming a member. It allows you to have discounts on the certification courseware and other items. So Apex Core is it's a non-member rate, and that's why you can see that the prices for those are a little bit higher.
Yeah, this is a couple of years ago, I think, we split our membership into Plus and Core, and with the idea that the people who already have earned certification and don't need the discounts and so on, well, maybe they should pay a little bit less for their membership. But the Plus members pay a little bit more, not a lot, a little bit more, but they get significant discounts on our various products.
And Bob, the members get some great tools as well. People were asking a little bit earlier about the dictionary and the exam content manual, and I know that these members get some of those tools.
Yes. So the dictionary is free to all members. Download. The app is free, actually to everybody, the dictionary app. And the ECM is a free download for Apex members. So a lot of the stuff, to kind of get you started or to understand the context is easy to get a hold of. Someone asked, what are the dates for the exam? The CSCP exam is basically offered year-round. So there are no specific windows of dates that you have to take the exam anymore. That's true around the world. As Kathy said, we've got many testing centers all around the world. We use Pearson VUE as our test administrator, and they're one of the largest test administrators in the world. The real question is whether the test center you want to go to, their availability that day. So if they're open and they've got availability, so these test centers offer exams for a variety of other professions as well. So you'll want to give yourself some time and check ahead, and that way you'll be more likely to get the date and the time that you want. But you can do it anytime during the year when those test centers are open.
So Kathy, once someone's passed the exam, I saw there were some questions about maintenance. Do you just want to talk a little bit about kind of how that process works?
Actually, I'm going to have Bob talk about that process a little bit, since he has his CPIM and had to maintain it.
Yes, I have had to maintain it. So each of our certifications has a 5-year maintenance period, and the reason that we do that is because the body of knowledge does not stand still, and just like any other professional area, whether it's a CPA or a lawyer or doctor, you need to continue to refresh your knowledge and to learn new things. So the certification maintenance, basically, there are a number of ways you can earn points. You need 75 points over the 5-year period. You get points for staying an Apex member, whichever level you're at is fine. You get points for attending education. You get points for a variety of things. If you go onto apex.org and pull down the education and certification drop-down box, you'll find a link there that goes to the certification maintenance, and it'll give you a lot more information about all the things that we do that are available to you. The goal here is to help you continue to refresh your knowledge, but not to make it super hard. So there are a variety of ways that you can earn the 75 points you need. And again, that's over a 5-year period, which really isn't difficult at all.
Thanks, Bob. I think we also have time for a couple more questions. We have a great one here about, is there a way to connect with other people who would be studying for the exam? So if you are a member of APICS, we actually have something called the Supply Chain Channel, and there's a community there where you can become a member. That access to the Supply Chain Channel is free once you're a member, and you can go in and talk to the other people who are also interested in the certifications. And it's a great way to connect with the other members who might be studying for CSCP or other APICS certifications.
Maybe one more question. It's hard, there are so many good questions. Well, now again, we will answer all these questions in a document that will be posted, but we'll go ahead and finish one more.
There's a question about how the exam is kind of graded, and actually there's some great references out there that you guys have about the scaled score and what that means in terms of points. I don't know if it would be worth sending that reference out later or talking about that now, but
we can certainly put the references in this document so that they can, or rather links to those references. But real briefly, there is no specific percentage. You don't have to get a 70% to pass the exam. Each of the exam forms, that's the exam that you take, and there are multiple forms for each of our certifications. Some may be a little harder and a little than others. Some forms may be a little easier than others. We do have a psychometrician and a group of professionals who review these exam forms and determine what the passing score, the raw score, needs to be for that form. Whether it's, if it's a little harder than others, then that score might be lower like that. So we try and even out the exams that way. And then we use an algorithm and take that raw score and turn it into the passing score becomes 300. And then the algorithm, if you score, better, it'll bring you up. If you don't score, if you don't answer enough questions correctly, you'll be below 300. But it's a little bit different, and we will put some links in this document so you can get a little more information if that would help. All right, this is great. That's all the time we have for questions today. As a reminder, we'll consolidate all the questions received and answer them in the Q&A document. Feel free to share the link we send you with your colleagues or boss or other decision makers in your company. So a reminder, this is the third in our four-part webinar series. We hope you'll join us for a more in-depth look at CLTD certification program. Visit apics.org/events to register for that upcoming webinar. Thank you for attending today. Have a great day. All content and materials included in this online event are the property of APICS and are protected by the United States and international copyright laws. All rights are reserved.